Welcome in to
A Feel Good Friday edition of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton.
But it is just me, Fultoncaster, here with you on another solo edition of the show. Back-to-back solo Fridays, but two different hosts. Jake had to do last Friday's solo because I was gone at a wedding. And I will be doing today's solo because Jake has taken the day off a little early for Memorial Day weekend. So hope Jake is enjoying his time with his family. He left yesterday, so he's already down there. So Jake is having a great time. Much like the rest of you, if you're at work right now, I hope it goes by nice and quick for you to jump into the long weekend. And if you are not at work right now, hope you're just having a good day. We're just having a good time. Because that will be the vibe of today's show. It is Memorial Day weekend is coming up. Oh, you have a safe Memorial Day weekend, which will be a subject of part of our show today. But it is just me riding with you, Kyle. Of course, I got Kyle with me to help me out with a few things coming up on today's show. But it'll be a fun show coming up here on a Friday afternoon on 580 WIBW. We got a jam-packed edition of the show today. We're going to look at the Royals and what we can learn from the Hunter Dozier contract situation. And more importantly, what lessons, most importantly, need to be taken away from that contract situation. We're going to talk automated balls and strikes. The robo-umps have been making the news because they're being tested in two different ways down at AAA this season. Jeff Passan of ESPN put out a piece on how it's being received for the robo-umps. I have some thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on the automated strike zone and the automated balls and strikes system. And we're going to look at a couple of ways it can be implemented in MLB. And if some of the criticisms of it are fair or if they're, in my opinion, incredibly stupid. Look at that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. We're going to look at the Chiefs secondary. Jake and I briefly discussed yesterday about Legarius needing his contract extension. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. Are the Chiefs really as set up as we think they are with their secondary coming up if they were to let Legarius Sneed walk? We're going to look at that as well. We're also going to preview the Royals and National Series starting tonight and going through this weekend. We are off early today. We are off at 2:30. For K-State baseball pregame. Is not only do we have the Batcats coming up at 3 o'clock right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas 580 WIBW, we have a Sunflower Showdown edition of some Big 12 postseason baseball as at the Big 12 Championship. It's called a Big 12 tournament.
Why has it got to be called the Big 12 Championship?
As the Big 12 Championship, it will be K-State and KU going on today and going in action. That is a 3 o'clock first pitch, 2:30 pregame right here on your home for Sports in Kansas 580 WIBW. So I'm off at 2:30. I get to start my weekend a little bit early thanks to the Batcats. We're still trying to stay alive for their postseason hopes. As always, you can join in on the conversation on the text line, 785-272-9429. Also on the Flame Place Wine and Spirits phone line, 785-272-9429. You can also jump in the comment section of our YouTube live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Search it up, click on it, subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And you can jump in the comment section as well. Kent Swanson will also join me at the bottom of this hour to talk all things Chiefs, which just got more interesting. Folks, we love a top of the hour news dump. We absolutely love it. This just coming down the pipe from Adam Schefter of ESPN. The Arizona Cardinals have released wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. He has been officially released by the Arizona Cardinals as they've been trying to find a way to trade him, to get rid of him, to avoid paying for him, to find a way. DeAndre Hopkins has been released. So he is, as far as I know, as of this moment in time, a free agent. Cardinals were on the hook for $29.9 million against the cap with DeAndre Hopkins. His dead cap, if I am lucky enough to be able to still find it, as I hope the internet works quickly. Also, the other problem is I'm trying to go to the greatest spot for contract looking up, which is Spotrac. The problem is I bet I'm not the only person thinking about this, and their website occasionally does suffer from overload issues. Either way, the Cardinals are on the hook for just the dead cap of DeAndre Hopkins' contract situation. He's free to sign with whatever team he wants to sign for. And I am fascinated to see if the Chiefs take a shot and see if they could find a way to sign him. Financially is still the thing. But in theory, because of that dead cap, because of what the Cardinals are still paying him, could you convince DeAndre Hopkins to come on a cheaper deal? I don't know. I am fascinated by that. We will look at that as this show goes on. More importantly, Kent Swanson and I will break that down heavily at the bottom of this hour, the Chiefs and DeAndre Hopkins, because here's the thing. I still feel as a player, just as a raw player on a football team, DeAndre Hopkins still has something to give to you. I think Jake and I went over this a while ago when this was first really turning around and churning, and there was the wondering of, what DeAndre Hopkins would do. Can you trade for him? What would that look like? Yada, 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 yada. And my big thing was, I know he's moving to what we call the wrong side of 30. He's getting older. The thing is, he's been hurt as well, but when he's healthy and on the field, he still produces, and he's been producing with subpar quarterback play. I feel the injury concerns aren't that big of a deal. I think he's overall healthier than anyone can imagine. The PED suspension, it is what it is. That's its own tricky little thing. But everything you can hear about DeAndre Hopkins beyond that, and even before that suspension, he seems like a fine guy to fit in the clubhouse. And as I always say, when it comes to guys with potential character issues, if Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes sign off on it, I'm good with it. That clubhouse culture is so strong that if Reid and Mahomes think that a guy can come in and fit with what they've established, I believe them and believe in them to make it work. So that's where I go on that front. But we've talked so much about the Chiefs wide receivers and what the wide receivers will be and what, if any, other moves they need to make. Right now, Kadarius Toney, as we've said a lot, is your wide receiver one. He's the guy that you're going to go in there and kind of put into the space of being the number one guy that the Chiefs are going to try and roll with to the best of their abilities. And I'm fine with that, but you have the injury concerns and the fact that he's never been a number one wide receiver. And that's your thing with every wide receiver on this roster, with Toney, with MVS, with Sky Moore, with Richie James, with Justin Watson, and then you got the rookie and Rashee Rice. None of these guys have been a bona fide number one. That's not necessarily a problem, and you believe in Patrick Mahomes to make them better. But now, in a potential situation where you could get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins to potentially come on for a lower than market deal, or a lower than you would assume market deal for a wide receiver of his talent, that's tempting. That's incredibly tempting because it just feels like he has so much to be able to give to an NFL team. And while I do think, do I think, to sum it up in maybe a little bit of a simpler way, do I think the Chiefs need DeAndre Hopkins to be successful, to be a Super Bowl contender, all those different things? No, not at all. I think as they are currently constructed, the Chiefs are a Super Bowl contender. But as we always say, if you can make your team better and find a way to make your team better within the confines of the things that exist to limit you, why not do it? That's my thought. Why not do it? For what it is worth, the dead cap for DeAndre Hopkins this year is $22 million as the dead cap. That is his dead cap. I do not believe he is considered a post-June 1 release, although we are so close to it, maybe he will be. We will see when paperwork and whatnot gets finalized. It's either $22 million to the dead cap just this year or $11 and $11 the next 2 years. Either way, the Arizona Cardinals are eating a lot of money. And with that, DeAndre Hopkins gets paid that money. Like, dead cap's not just, you have to have this number on the thing that punishes you, but no one gets it. No, that's money that goes to that player. They're being paid by that team to not be on their team. So DeAndre Hopkins is still going to get $22 million this year, no matter where he plays football. And that's where the financial part of this comes in. And again, this is as far as I know. Maybe there's some more complicated legalese with the NFL contracts I'm not privy to or aware of. To my understanding, that's how this all works. And I'm not saying DeAndre Hopkins is going to be like, all right, I'm just going to sign for the vet minimum. I don't think he would do something like that, but could DeAndre Hopkins come in on a cheaper 1-year deal with a lower base and incentives to earn a lot more? Maybe he's open to that. Maybe he's open to something shorter to, recapture that form at the age of 31. So he turns 31 next week, I believe. Actually, no, in about a week and a half. About a week and a half. His birthday is June 6th. DeAndre Hopkins turns 31 years old. So he'll be 31 for the upcoming season. Does he sign for a cheaper deal than expected? I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I'm not, like, it's an I don't know on that front. But if the Chiefs can make the finances line up, and there's still a way to do it, the bigger way to do it is, of course, the simple fact of extending Chris Jones. But I wonder what they try and do. And the Chiefs are on the short list of teams that could sign him. We talked about a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins I can't remember the podcast he was on. It's that sort of podcast. It was just like, facial, it was a video segment. So like, through facial expressions, show which team you want to play with. And he hinted he would like to play in Kansas City. DeAndre Hopkins has said in a short list, he would like to play for a team with a good GM and coach, a really good quarterback, and a chance to win. What team strikes all three of those boxes, folks? And that's where this isn't necessarily a pipe dream. This, to me, all comes down to financials of what he does. But DeAndre Hopkins immediately becomes one of the most coveted, if not the most coveted player now on the board. I think a 1-year deal is what he signs with anyone to reset himself a little bit here because, and I want to get the attribution correct here, so give me just one quick moment. Jeff Darlington of ESPN just put out this tweet, and it kind of goes like, quote, "Totally speculative, but a short-term deal with the Chiefs would make so much sense to me. The fact Hopkins is available via free agency shows you his value needs to be improved. Nowhere better to do it right now than KC. Win-win." I agree with Jeff Darlington, and that's not just from the Chiefs' homer glasses, though those are on a little bit here. I think a team like Buffalo, because Von Miller just did the classic tweeting of the eyeball emojis, the two little eyes to the side that are like, oh, look at this thing here. Like, the Bills are a team I think should try and go and sign him. Any of the top contenders, not named the Cincinnati Bengals, should go try and sign DeAndre Hopkins. And I think any of those teams on a 1-year deal are kind of what DeAndre should do because the Cardinals releasing him straight up and no one wanting to trade for him tells you something. It tells you the NFL as a whole does not, at the current moment, did not, I guess should be the way I should word this, did not view DeAndre Hopkins as worth the price tag that would have come with him. That no one believed he was worth the $30-some million cap hit this year and the $25-some million cap hit next year. No one believed that. And that tells DeAndre something. And that the Cardinals are willing to eat $22 million to not have him on their team. So that's why I think a 1-year prove-it deal is what works for him and what he might seek out a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins, the last 2 seasons in Arizona, has played only 19 total games. He missed a lot of time due to both injury and suspension. Now, last year, in 9 games, he had 64 catches for 717 yards, more than he had in 10 games in 2021. Now, we only had 3 touchdowns in 2022 compared to 8 touchdowns in 2021. But as I've always, and I did also point out to Jake when we talked about this last time, he was doing that a lot of times without Kyler Murray. Even with Kyler Murray. But I think we can all agree that Kyler Murray to Patrick Mahomes is kind of a different level, different stepping stone a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins has always found a way to produce with subpar quarterback play. Remember some of the quarterbacks he had in Houston. I mean, Matt Schaub was fine. But we had TJ Yates in there. We had Ryan Mallett in there. I think we had some Case Keenum in there too, if I'm not mistaken. He always has produced. And I still firmly believe there is juice left in that tank. And there's something left to get out. So I don't know what the deal would be. I don't know what the deal would look like. I don't know what kind of structure the Chiefs could work out if they tried to do it. But, I mean, if I'm Brett Veach, I kick the tires. I bring him in the building and say, listen, this is where we're at. This is what we can do financially. What can you do to help us? Like, we want you here. We want you as a member of this football team. You come here, you play with Patrick Mahomes. You play with the best quarterback currently playing in the NFL. You've never had that, DeAndre. Not once, not ever, not even close has he played with a quarterback of the talent of Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if that's what will happen, but there was a lot of rumblings about the Chiefs thinking about kicking the tires and trying to trade for him before. Why would that not come back up now? Why would they not try to reach out now with him being a free agent and basically being able to sign whatever deal he wants to sign now that he's free to do what he wants to do? The Chiefs have been quiet for a little bit. They have to do some other moves to make the space. Like, I don't think you can make this move without a Chris Jones contract extension in such a way that drops this year's cap hit and frees up some cap space. Basically rip up this final year on his current deal and give him a brand new one that starts this year. I think you would have to do that. But there might be some other ways to try and trigger some mechanisms and get him under there. The cap is flexible. It's real, but it is very flexible. But I'm just so fascinated to see what the Chiefs do and what we start hearing and where, DeAndre Hopkins ends up at all. But this is just massive news that we've been hearing the rumblings about what they would do. I was never really convinced they were going to release him because the dead cap was so big. They do save about $8 to $9 million against the cap by cutting DeAndre Hopkins. But it just felt like keeping him and just letting him run out there and see if he could regain some value to be traded later, I thought was the better move. But, I mean, Arizona can do whatever Arizona wants to do. But I'm truly fascinated to see what happens here. But DeAndre Hopkins on the market as of right now. We'll see if the Chiefs take a swipe at him. We'll see if they try to sign him. It'd be a good signing to me. I don't think the Chiefs need to make their wide receiver room that much better. But you will never say no to adding a player of DeAndre Hopkins' caliber to that room to play with Patrick Mahomes and would vault them even higher into the Super Bowl conversation. They try and repeat and become back-to-back Super Bowl champions. We'll take our first time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, well, this week's edition of On Second Thought. Time for On Second Thought here on Mic'd Up, that part at the end of the week where usually Jake and I, but I think it's just me, look back on something stupid we said earlier in the week and decide we need a mulligan. Mine this week is a little different because it's a rare off the air On Second Thought, but it is something that I was spouting constantly to every single coworker in the office. After K-State lost to TCU, and I was like, man, they're going to play the 9 a.m. game. That's a bummer to stay alive. And then when KU beat Texas, and so we knew it was going to be K-State, Texas yesterday morning, I made many a comment of, well, K-State, that season was fun while it lasted. Enjoy getting your butts kicked by Texas. Because I was confident there is no way Texas would have back-to-back duds down at Globe Life Field. I was confident. And it had nothing to do with K-State, really. It really didn't. I think the Batcats are a fairly solid team, have some weaknesses, but overall, like, they're a fringe bubble team, and I think them getting in the NCAA tournament is probably where they'll be at this point. But they're not Texas, a team that could have honestly been a regional host if they had not screwed up this week. But then the Batcats come out and blank Texas. They come out and beat them 6-0. And I was like, well, I could not have been more wrong. So to all the K-State fans and the Batcat fans out there, I was an idiot. I was very, very wrong. I was confident enough. I made several jokes of that K-State would be playing only 14 innings of baseball down in Texas. That they would get run ruled not once but twice after that TCU game because I thought Texas would do it too. And I was wrong. K-State performed well. They surprised me like crazy. And now my show gets to be 30 minutes shorter today. 580 Sports Talk doesn't exist today. And the Batcats get to have a Sunflower Showdown matchup down in Texas. So it's much better that I was wrong. Everything's more fun that I was wrong on this one. I want to be very clear about that. But yeah, a rare off the air On Second Thought, but Jake can confirm I spent a lot of time talking about how Texas was going to beat the crap out of K-State on the diamond, and it was the other way around. And honestly, you absolutely love to see it. That'll do it for this week's On Second Thought. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, Kent Swanson, the KC Sports Network, will join me as we're probably going to talk a lot of DeAndre Hopkins, potentially to the Chiefs. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you. Thank you for joining me on this Memorial Day leading into weekend edition of the show. That's the best way to word it. It's not the easiest wording to get that right. It's not as easy as because the holiday isn't day really weekend. I'm rambling about something really off, but that's par for the course for what happens when I get to run this show for a little bit. Thank you for joining me. As always, everyone loves to listen today. To give you a little preview, Kyle and I are going to do our favorite Memorial Day cookout essentials. Doesn't have to just be food. Probably be a lot of food, but food, drinks, activities, if there's a specific thing you want to do at the Memorial Day cookout. But there'll be a lot of travel and a lot of probably grilling and other things this weekend. So in the theme of that is what Kyle and I will be doing for today's list. I want to thank the NFL specifically, again, for giving me such a great topic to lead off today's show with the release of DeAndre Hopkins by the Arizona Cardinals and him now being an official free agent. And it works even perfectly because my next guest probably has a lot of thoughts on if the Chiefs should sign DeAndre Hopkins. As I bring in our good friend, Kent Swanson. He covers the Kansas City Chiefs for the KC Sports Network, does a fantastic job. Go follow all the guys and all the work over there at the KC Sports Network. You can follow Kent on Twitter at Kent_Swanson, joining me now live on the Flame Place Wine and Spirits phone line. And Kent, I guess we have but one place to start. Did you expect to see that DeAndre Hopkins would now be a free agent come noon today?
Not today, but I do think that there was, there was some speculation, some buzz out there that he could actually wind up making it to free agency, and he eventually did. I mean, I think when you look at it, the discussion and the discourse obviously started with, hey, maybe there's a trade out there for him. I think DeAndre Hopkins on the wrong side of 30 finally kind of learned that maybe the compensation for him is probably not going to be what he expected. And, it seems like the Cardinals are kind of, one, doing right by their star, but also kind of initiating the tank and then just biting the bullet and then taking it all on right now.
When looking at this release by DeAndre Hopkins, and as we've learned from Ian Rappaport at the NFL, that this is not a post-June 1 designations. This is they're taking all $22 million on this year, and oh boy, is that a large chunk of money that the Arizona Cardinals are eating. As we all know, the Chiefs were interested, or at least reported to be interested, when it was just going to be a trade market situation. Now with DeAndre Hopkins officially released, you have to imagine they might be interested yet again with being able to kind of negotiate the financials and maybe take on a lower cap hit. From a simple financial perspective, do you feel the Chiefs can find a way, or more importantly, how do you think the Chiefs go about finding a way to just financially be able to take on DeAndre Hopkins? Because the cap space is a little limited for Kansas City right now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's gonna necessitate a move in some capacity if they're going to try to make this happen. There's really not a ton of avenues that they're going to be able, to do that outside of, being aggressive and trying to figure something out for Chris Jones. Like, I think that's one of the more logical ways in which this team can probably kind of try to create some cap space. Obviously, the Mahomes move's already been done. There might be a few things they can try to do to try to make it work. I think what's going to happen, though, it's not that they're going to I don't think they're going to have to create $15 million in cap space for 2023 necessarily in order to make this work. I think they're probably going to go the route of a low guaranteed money in 2023 with incentives that can really push that number up significantly for DeAndre Hopkins. Kind of similar to what they did with Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster had a low cap hit for 2022. The Chiefs are eating it a little bit in 2023 with not likely to be earned incentives. And honestly, with Nuke Hopkins' situation with a limited amount of playing time last year, could really, could be an option for them to create some not likely to be earned incentives with regards to playing time that could allow Nuke to feel like he's going to be making some money in 2023 while making it financially flexible for the Chiefs to be able to do it.
That's kind of where I'm at. I feel like that's the kind of deal that even if it's not with the Chiefs is what he might be looking for or be best suited for him in general is kind of that low guarantee, high incentive, because this kind of move tells me that maybe a lot of teams, I'm not saying they don't think he's a great player anymore, but maybe that high price tag isn't what he was going to be anymore. I've seen a couple of thoughts on the contract side of this, that some people would be surprised if he would make less or sign a smaller deal than what Odell Beckham Jr. signed with the Baltimore Ravens. And that was a 1 year, $15 million deal, incredibly low cap hit of only about $3 million this year. Then, they did the void year stuff and all the manipulation to make the money work and all that funny money and things like that. Thinking of that, just that in itself in a vacuum, do you think DeAndre Hopkins would look for something that total money is more than what Odell got? Or is he just going to be looking for, I want to go play for a great quarterback and a championship caliber team so that way I can both A, try and get a ring that I haven't gotten ever before, and B, set myself up for maybe another big payday coming up next year?
From my understanding of, and I'm not saying I'm super, well connected with this, but my understanding is that, if it's competitive, I think Nuke Hopkins will look for, we'll look for some money, but we'll also look to win. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a hybrid. I think if the Chiefs are relatively competitive to the rest of the market, we'll throw like the Giants out. If the Chiefs are coming in a little bit less than someone like the Giants, I think Nuke Hopkins will take that deal over signing with the Giants because he's got a better chance of winning the Super Bowl. And honestly, if he's trying to get another contract out of this, it's a better fit for him to play with a Patrick Mahomes rather than Daniel Jones anyway. So I think there's some intangible value that the Chiefs present because, hey, he's the only quarterback in the NFL with multiple rings right now. He's a high volume passer. This is an offense that he could thrive in. So I don't think the Chiefs have to be the top of the market for Nuke. They just have to be competitive. But I think there's probably a couple teams in that consideration as well.
Looking at this going to an on-field perspective, let's say we can live in a world that at least I think you would enjoy, where DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's live in that fun little world for a moment here. On field, What would DeAndre Hopkins bring to this team, given the current construction of the wide receiver room and the current construction of the offense? What do you think is the number one benefit that DeAndre Hopkins would bring to this 2023 Kansas City Chiefs offense?
A true X receiver, a guy that can play on the line of scrimmage on the backside of a formation and kind of take some of the pressure off of Travis Kelce a little bit. Like, I think that's just on its face. Just you've got a reliable player that has the physical skill set and the experience to be able to step on the field day one and contribute as a guy that can play on the line of scrimmage as an X receiver. There's so many intangibles to simply just being able to make that statement, because that can help stretch out your receiver room, and it can also help take some of the pressure off of Travis Kelce. Just simply being able to be an X receiver the way that Nuke Hopkins is, and a good one. Don't get me wrong, he's still good. That's an extremely valuable asset for this football team.
The other side of it, if DeAndre Hopkins were to join this football team, is this is already a pretty crowded wide receiver room, and someone would probably have to get left on the cutting room floor based on how the construction and everything would work out. Is there any particular receiver on this team right now that you think would suffer the most with DeAndre Hopkins being added? Whether that be they're still on the team, but their ability to have production, their ability to get targets would be limited, or is there somebody you think, man, if DeAndre Hopkins were to sign with this team, I don't see a way this guy in particular stays on the roster for this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the big questions. Like, I could see, it's such a, I don't want to say, it's not a thin room. It's a deep room that doesn't have a lot of just, high level players. I think the guys that you got to pay attention to that could be, it could damage their opportunities. Justin Watson. It could really push Justin Ross out of the equation potentially, because I think if Justin Ross is going to make the roster, you've got to have some special teams ability to kind of offset that. Because I don't think he's going to be a big contributor. So if you're adding another guy that's probably not going to be playing a ton of special teams, then a guy like Justin Ross who's not going to play special teams might get pushed down that roster. It could take some opportunities away from a little bit from Sky Moore. I could see that just because of Nuke Hopkins can line up anywhere on the field, and if you're going through receivers, who knows what that looks like for him. So I think there's a couple guys that could be hurt by it, but also I think insulating this group is a big deal for the Chiefs' pursuit of a title, because there's some question marks there just in the entirety of the roster construction of the receiver position. I think Nuke Hopkins can help that in a big way.
Ken Swanson is my guest here on Mic'd Up on the Flying Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Kent helps cover the Chiefs for the KC Sports Network. Just fantastic work by all the guys over there at KCSN. You can follow Kent on Twitter at Kent_Swanson. All right, so moving to more of the actual players we know for sure are on this team and are actually under contract for the Kansas City Chiefs this season. OTAs began this week. We had a few practices at our one media session for the Chiefs back on Wednesday. And there were some interesting comments from both Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in particular. And one of the big ones I heard out of Patrick Mahomes was his thoughts on his own contract situation and how he's maybe more focused on rings and legacy versus just being the highest paid player at the position. Just in general, what does that mean for the Chiefs in their ability to construct a team that their star player, that the face of not just their team, but arguably becoming the face of the NFL, is willing to look so much towards the flexibility of the cap situation to just have a competitive team around them rather than potentially be hunting for just his own paydays? How does that kind of just, what kind of a blessing, I guess, is that to the Chiefs and their ability to stay competitive, that their best player and their number one guy is so willing to maybe tighten his own financial purse strings so that other guys can get paid and better players can be brought onto the team?
I think it's mostly a blessing. There's two sides of it. I'll get to it, but the blessing is obviously, you've got a guy who's more, it's not like Mahomes is struggling for money. He's just a very grounded guy that understands that, $500 million is probably going to be okay for his family and in generations of his family. So that's always nice. He's not, some guys look at contracts, especially in the NFL, they'll look at contracts as a respect. Mahomes is, he doesn't need that validation. He understands, that what he is and who he is. He's the best player in the world, and he's going to get some benefits for being the best player in the world outside of an NFL contract. And if he wants to chase the legacy that he's trying to chase, he's going to have some flexibility for this football team. So I think, that mentality definitely attracts some people. I think it could potentially help with Chris Jones negotiation. With Mahomes setting that example and setting that standard within Kansas City, the curse is you better take care of putting a team around him. If he's going to do this, if he's going to come out and be honest and upfront and, try to be realistic with his contract without trying to go, too ridiculous and make it hurt for the Chiefs because he wants to try to keep players around him, you better be good about keeping players around him. You better not take advantage too far of the gift that he's giving you by kind of being flexible with his contract. So, there's a big burden and a big responsibility for Brett Beach and this organization to make sure that they are, appropriately managing the blessing that is Patrick Mahomes and his flexibility with his contract.
I think that's a fantastic way to look at it and put it, Kent. Patrick Mahomes also discussed, in speaking about his own situation, name dropped a couple of guys that he, would hope to get paid. One of those being Chris Jones, and we're all kind of on board with the Chris Jones thing. It seems to be a consensus among at least a large portion of, Chiefs Kingdom and Chiefs fandom that Chris Jones should get paid and should get an extension to stay around. There's a small minority that wants to trade him, but those people have their own thoughts and their own belief systems, and I think they're wrong, but it is what it is. He also discussed L'Jarius Sneed, which I found fascinating, about him maybe a guy needing to be paid. And that's when people have talked about some of, L'Jarius Sneed's a free agent after this year and could use a contract extension. But the Chiefs also have a really young and talented corner room with a lot of young, cheap talent in it. Where do you stand on a potential L'Jarius Sneed contract extension? And I guess more importantly, how do you view that room as a whole when behind L'Jarius Sneed, you have so many young and talented players?
Yeah, it's a tough negotiation, and it's a tough situation to navigate because L'Jarius Sneed's had a fantastic career here in Kansas City. He's a guy that's warranted to get paid in some capacity, and he put together a really solid season last year. What makes it tricky is you talk about the depth and talent of this receiver room and our cornerback room. Sorry, they hit on 3 cornerbacks in one single draft. That's unprecedented. That's rare. They got 3 guys with a lot of flexibility, inside outside flexibility. They just drafted Shamari Connor, the safety, that can play in the slot a little bit similarly to how L'Jarius Sneed can as a blitzer and all that kind of stuff. So the Chiefs are well insulated if they can't come to a deal and come to an agreement with L'Jarius Sneed. There's been some injuries with Sneed in the past. He's not participating in OTAs right now, for instance, too. So it's a difficult negotiation. I think you've got to pay attention to Mahomes saying it, though, because that's a guy that Mahomes wants to see as part of this, team. You've got to, kind of balance that, like we just talked about the blessing. But you've got to be disciplined to some degree with what you're willing to pay him. So as long as the market doesn't get too outrageous, if it's a reasonable contract, I think L'Jarius Sneed's back up. But it's going to be fascinating to see that negotiation and what the number is.
Another thing coming out of the OT media things, this one from Andy Reid, he kind of mentioned that without a fullback on the roster, he might use the tight ends a little bit more and kind of that fullback, H-back type of role. I know that's something that's been kind of already on your mind a little bit. How much do you think it actually fits into the Chiefs' play calling style and some of the things they can do by, instead of having the traditional fullback do some of those jobs, maybe bringing a guy like Noah Gray into the backfield and do different things out of it? Just what do you think about the tight ends possibly being used as fullbacks / H-backs a little bit this year?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially, I think it actually makes more sense to have more tight ends than a traditional fullback within Andy Reid's offense. Michael Burton played about 6% of the offensive snaps last year. So you're talking about a very small number of plays that Michael Burton's actually participating on offense. They've ran the fullback dive a little bit. But Noah Gray can do that. Noah Gray can QB sneak. We've seen him QB sneak in the past. If Blake Bell makes the roster, they've seen him QB sneak in the past. So, I think you can use your tight ends a little bit more diverse, to kind of, treat him as a fullback at times. I think about this team could go 13 personnel with, one receiver, one running back, 3 tight ends on the roster, on the field. That's a personnel grouping where you can, line it up tight and run a traditional kind of short yardage formation with Noah Gray in the backfield. But it's also a group that even in a short situation, you can go empty. You can go empty with that group and kind of just create a lot of problems for defenses and how they navigate, negotiate, the personnel that they're putting on the field in a short yardage situation. So I think it's a unique opportunity for this group to get creative with their short yardage plays. And, the fullback dive wasn't as successful as it was the year prior anyway. So maybe this is the time to kind of move on and figure some different things out.
All right, Kent, my final 2 questions for you, my 2 for the road. First things first, I know you cover a lot of the KCG, especially a little bit of a KU hoops guy, much like myself. What do you feel about the fact that KU has Kevin McCullough back, a thing that I personally didn't think was ever going to happen and just accepted he was gone? But how do you feel that Kevin McCullough is back with the Kansas Jayhawks for one more season?
That's a terrifying defensive group right there, if you ask me. Like, good Lord. Like, that group can guard. And, I don't know if Hunter Dickinson's necessarily the greatest rim protector, but just be 7'2" and play with length, and you've got great guard, great defense around you. Like, that's scary. If this group shoots a little bit better, if Kevin McCullough comes back with a better, a little bit better jumper, a little bit more consistency from 3, and then we got like a Nick Timberlake that can shoot as well. Like, boy, that's a lot. that's a good group.
That's been my entire thought since he announced he was coming back was, man, at minimum, you put him and DeJuan and Dickinson and KJ on the floor defensively. That's just a really enjoyable time defensively to watch that team play some basketball. My final question for you, Kent, it's Memorial Day weekend. Our list today is Cookout Essentials. Is there anything, if you were at a Memorial Day cookout, anything you need to be there, whether it be a food item, a drink on the table, a specific activity y'all are doing? Is there anything that's an essential to you for a Memorial Day cookout?
Give me some pulled pork and some pasta salad, and I'm golden. So I'm hoping to get into both of those this weekend, if I'm being honest.
Man, I hope you do as well. That sounds fantastic. Kent, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. Enjoy the little bit of long weekend, and hopefully we can get to have some more Chiefs news coming up next week. Maybe they're start turning things around to DeAndre Hopkins a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go nuclear if they're able to sign Hopkins.
That is Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. Always a pleasure to have Kent on the program. Man, leaving us with a pun. I love nothing better than that from Kent. Man, pulled pork and pasta. I'm not a pasta salad or even a potato salad guy, but pulled pork, high level thing. I do thoroughly enjoy. That'll do it for this hour of Mic'd Up. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, automatic balls and strikes, the robo umps. There's been a lot of talk about them, and I have some thoughts. We'll get to that, plus everyone loves the list coming up in the 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up. Time for hour number 2, otherwise known as the last full hour of Mic'd Up today. That is right, we are off 30 minutes early, so this is your last full hour of the program. We're off at 2:30 today for some Kansas State baseball pregame as they take on the Kansas Jayhawks down at Globe Life Field in Texas at the Big 12 Championship down there in Arlington. Winner moves on, loser goes home. It's nothing personal against you, K-State, but as a KU alumnus, or alum, whatever that word is, I don't know. Words are hard. As a guy who went to KU, let's use that phrase. A little more words, and I feel less stupid. I kind of hope the Jayhawks win today. I'd be a fan. Personally, it'd be really cool. But nonetheless, we'll have that coming up at 3 o'clock is the scheduled first pitch for KU and K-State in the Sunflower Showdown coming up from Globe Life Field in Arlington. K-State got the sweep in the regular season, so K-State would have to beat KU 4 straight times to be able to advance, which, on the one hand, you feel good because K-State's beaten KU every time they play this year, so you would think they could beat them again. Beating a team 4 times is really hard. So I wonder if K-State can do it. No matter what, I think they're safe as far as their NCAA tournament prospects go. I know there are some that kind of have them on the bubble. D1baseball.com, kind of the premier spot for college baseball coverage. Even after K-State's lost to TCU, still had K-State in the NCAA tournament field. So I imagine with them beating Texas, even if they lost to KU, I imagine K-State should still be fine. But if K-State would want to solidify their chances to be in the NCAA tournament coming up next week, or the week after. It starts in like late next week. Things are hard. Time's weird. Time is a weird concept. Either way, when it starts happening, a win today would help them. So with the selection shows on Monday, so it would start next weekend. Yeah, whatever. Point is, they have a chance to be in it if they get a win. Even if they lose, I still think they get a chance to be in it. Coming up in this hour of the show, as I stop rambling incoherently, because that's just what I specialize at, we're going to look at the automatic balls and strikes system, the ABS. Its pros, its cons, and why some people in the industry are not a fan of going for it all the way, and why I might kind of disagree with their thoughts on that matter. We're also going to look at the Chiefs' secondary a little bit and discuss kind of how it could be set for the future. And is a Legere contract extension needed? We talked a little bit about that with Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network, which, again, thank you to Kent for coming on at the bottom of last hour to chat about all those things. We're going to look at that a little bit and just see what the Chiefs secondary room looks like as well. We have Everyone Loves the List today as well. Memorial Day Cookout Essentials. What do Kyle and I think you need at the cookout? Food, drinks, games, sports, people even. I mean, maybe for some reason we think you need a specific type of person there. I don't know. I don't know if others would have that, but I mean, it's technically not off the list. Not off what's not allowed. You know what I'm saying. All that coming up here in the 1 o'clock hour of the show. You can join in, as always, on the text line, 785-272-9429. Also, on the Flame Place Wine and Spirits phone line, 785-272-9429. Also, in the comment section of our YouTube live stream, we're live on YouTube like we are for every single show Monday through Friday. YouTube.com, Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. You can hop in, subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And then you can jump in the comment section of the show as well. But to kick off this hour of the show, we have spent some time in the past discussing the automatic balls and strikes system. It's otherwise known as the ABS, also sometimes called the robo-umps, though that's not perfectly the best term because we're not removing umpires entirely. In this day and age where we see a lot of viral videos of umpires getting balls and strikes wrong, you've heard me complain about it on the show. You've heard Jake complain about it. I've heard some of you on the text line and the YouTube comments complain about bad umpiring. With all that around it, Major League Baseball is experimenting with automating the zone or finding a way to clean that up. And what they're doing at AAA this year, so the highest level of the minor leagues, the AAA teams are doing two different things every series. The first three games of the series, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they do not play on Mondays. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they use a full ABS system. They have a bunch of different cameras set up around every AAA ballpark. They use what's called the Hawkeye system. It's the system that tennis uses. And it basically, through the cameras and a bunch of fixed points, sets up a virtual strike zone. That's a 2D plane that exists basically, I believe, at the letters of the batter up to his knees. They have a very defined way, and it's the width of the plate. And it's that very defined 2D zone that exists at the midpoint of the plate. So at the midpoint of home plate, under those width and length dimensions, is what the camera is measuring. And when a ball crosses the zone, within half a second, the umpire behind home plate receives the call through an earpiece and calls it a ball or a strike. ABS is the final judge, jury, executioner on the strike zone those 3 days. And according to Major League Baseball and the others and those implementing the system, the Hawkeye ABS zone system is accurate to 1/10 of an inch is what is accurate to for pitches in the zone. So sometimes even if the catcher catches it funky, they might call it a ball or a strike because that's just what the zone's measuring. Sometimes the frame job looks really good on the edge and a pitch that you're used to being called a strike isn't because the ABS says it's not a strike. That's what they use Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they use the ABS challenge system. So the cameras and the zone are all the exact same as the prior 3 days. But instead of the cameras calling balls and strikes and the electronically doing it, the home plate umpire is calling balls and strikes like we've done for over 100 years in baseball. There's a man in full gear behind the plate, standing behind the catcher, saying that's a ball, that's a strike. The system that honestly is kind of annoying sometimes. But it is a challenge system. So at any point in the game, a batter or a catcher, if they disagree with the call, can tap their head and we go to a review. And it is review, like if any of you have watched tennis and have watched the line review calls in tennis, where like real quickly up on the screen, you see a digital tennis ball come in and it bounces and it goes in or out. That's all it is. Like to a T, that's all it is. I mean, it's a baseball going into a strike zone versus a tennis ball on a tennis court, but the principle of the system is identical. And the zone and the system will say either, yes, you're right, and the umpire called it wrong, or it will say the umpire called it correctly. And then we move on. And the call is either changed or kept the same. Each team gets 3 challenges for the whole team for the whole game. If you succeed on your challenge, you keep it. If you fail on your challenge, you lose it. So it is a 3 strikes and you're out system for the challenges. Those are the 2 systems being tested in the minor leagues right now. And Jeff Passan at ESPN put together a fantastic piece, kind of interviewing different people and looking at the entire thing and getting people's thoughts on it. And the reviews have kind of been mixed on what it should be. Some people like it. Some people hate it. And this is the number one complaint I was seeing, and I'm going to quote here from Jeff Passan's article, that I firmly disagree with it as this being a reason to not do it. There is I want to get this young player's name correctly if I can find it. Yes. So the Charlotte Knights, the AAA team of the Chicago White Sox, their catcher in the game was Evan Skog. And kind of the point through this story is, Skog was talking about how he thought he caught a strike. It wasn't. He made the challenge, and, it was a ball. And Skog was incorrect. So Skog then was asked about his feeling on the full ABS system and why he would be for or against it. I mean, the full system, not the challenge system, the full system. And this is something I don't agree with. This is what Skog, the catcher, said for Charlotte. He said, quote, "I'm completely against full ABS when I'm catching, because if you think about it, some of the best catchers that I've idolized and looked up to while playing have made their career defensively. It doesn't really matter how great you hit if you can control the staff and steal some strikes. You can play for a really long time, and you can make a lot of money. There's so much more to the position value-wise that ABS would just put a damper on. But I think the challenge system is fun. I like watching hitters' faces in the box, so it's fun when the machine actually works and it shows you where the pitch was." First off, it's nice to see that Skog is cool with the challenge system. I think, honestly, that's the happy medium that we can all agree on. That, you know what? Even umpires, you were cool with replay. You were cool with replay to say if you're right or wrong. Give us a challenge system to see if you're right or wrong. Let's do it. Here's what I disagree with, though. And it's Skog saying it would damper some abilities of catchers because their ability to frame would be lost. That the art of framing, and I'm using heavy air quotes for those of you listening on the traditional radio airwaves, the art of framing would go away because the ABS system is electronic. It doesn't care what it looks like. It cares where that ball crossed the zone. And that's my problem with that argument. And that's the argument I've seen really start to crop up a little bit. I've long made this opinion of mine clear. I hate framing. I think catcher framing is stupid. I think us valuing some catchers better because they can frame is stupid. That was the entire knocking against Salvador Perez last year, was he couldn't frame. He wasn't a good pitch framer. That's stupid, and it's moronic, and I don't like it. And here's my reason why. And I say this even as the Royals catchers, Damon Salvador Perez, have gotten better at framing this year, so they have stolen some strikes with better framing. That's my problem, is that phrase I just had to use. Stealing strikes. The strike zone is the strike zone. It is defined in the rule book at what it should be. When we use ABS, it will electronically define the zone for a hitter. That's the zone. That's my problem. It's been often noted, and it's the thing we have to talk about when we talk about MLB saying LA umpires are successful. The MLB umpires get a 2-inch buffer on on the outside of the zone versus what we see on, if you somehow find a way to watch the Royals on TV, because it's very, very hard to do, or you're watching any game, you see the electronic strike zone box they have on the TV that you can watch and see. Add 2 inches around that on the outside, and that's what MLB umpires are graded on, which is stupid. They shouldn't get a buffer zone because that's not a strike. That's my whole problem with this thing and why I'm so in favor of an automated system. A strike is a strike. A ball is a ball. This is not a subjective thing. This is did you meet the requirements for a strike or did you not? This isn't I thought it looked close enough. No. This isn't the catcher grabbed it and moved it in so fast he got me. No, that's not okay. I get Evan Skog's point, the minor league catcher for Charlotte, and that maybe some guys who aren't as great hitters as catchers might lose a chance to become big leaguers because that key part of their defensive, that key to a defensive metric of framing goes away. And that there's just part of a thing you can evaluate them on and be considered a pro for them being big leaguers is taken away. I'm sorry, I don't care. Because I don't think that is a skill we should be valuing. To put it bluntly, I don't think we should be rewarding lying. Because that's what you are doing with framing. You are rewarding an art of trickery and tricking the umpire. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree when it happened. Like the Royals, there's been a couple games where they've benefited because the umpire gives them a strike outside of the zone that he calls a strike. I'm happy in the moment. I'll take it. But overall, I realize, no, that is entirely stupid, and I feel bad for the hitter. The Royals, as bad as they are, and they have plenty of problems on their own, have been compounded several times because umpires don't know what strikes are. If we are going in the rulebook to define the strike zone, if we are going to have it written in the rules of what a strike is and what a strike isn't, then that's where this conversation stops. We don't go to, well, we're going to give them a buff. We're going to give umpires a buffer zone to grade them on to decide if we should fire them or retain them or not. We're not going to go with, well, we're going to grade catchers on their ability to manipulate the zone and see if they can steal some strikes. No, that's not how this should be played. And that is a piece of the debate that has come up here that I'm just fully against. I'm sorry, young AAA minor league catchers that, or even just fringe guys in the big leagues, that you might, be demoted and lose your job because all you can provide is framing. I'm sorry. That stinks. That's a bummer. As a guy who loves baseball and would have been blessed to ever been able to be in the position that you guys are in, that sucks and it's brutal and I'm sorry for you. But you should also not get to keep your job because your best skill is manipulating the zone and stealing strikes from hitters. Pitchers shouldn't be rewarded because they can throw a pitch just on the outside enough that their catcher can steal it. No. Because also it goes the other way. Pitchers have gotten screwed because a ball is clearly a strike and the umpire goes, oh, nope. Like a catcher can receive a ball poorly and it is clearly as day in the zone. But because he got crossed up or had to receive it weirdly, the umpire won't call it. Where in ABS, that problem goes away. In that, no, that is a strike. I don't care what it looked like to you. By the definition of the rules we put in play, that's a strike. And that's kind of where I'm at with this whole debate because we kind of got there with pitch clock, and I don't know how quickly we're going to get there with some sort of automated zone or this challenge system. I think that's where we're going to go because I think there's going to be so much pushback to a full automated system that the challenge system is going to be the compromise. And it's a compromise I can live with. I want the full automated zone, but if we can get at least to a challenge system, that's a compromise I could be fine with. And MLB has talked about, they might bring it to the competition committee. And there's it has players on it and umpire and executives on it. And it's a competition committee. It's a joint committee. And they investigate the new rules and decide should they be added. I don't know if MLB would add this next year. With all the changes they just made, I don't know what they would do for us quickly adding new rules yet again. That feels a little fast. But the results are there. Like, it's a better system. Because the day and age of umpires getting to just guess what is a ball and a strike should go by the wayside. And yeah, like I said, it's a bummer if catchers lose their job because their framing no longer matters. But good. Catcher framing is stupid and silly. It is a pointless thing. Catcher framing is a skill that I hate hearing and hate exists. A strike is a strike, a ball is a ball. And that is how we should play this game. The NFL is trying to define a catch for years now to try and figure this out. And their problem is they've overcomplicated it. But they at least trying to define a thing within their rulebook. I'm not saying LB needs to over-legislate this issue, but figure out what the rulebook should say a strike zone is, and then call that. Don't change any other aspect. Don't give umpires leeway. Don't give them an excuse to be like, well, they are accurate if you give them the 2 inches off the plate. No! Because then they're not accurate. They're not doing their job. That's what it is for me, and it frustrates me. We're going to take a second here on Mic'd Up. We got everyone loves the list when we come back. Time for everyone's list here on Mic'd Up. A little bit of a fast version of us. I'm bringing my good friend Kyle Manthe to do it. Kyle, everyone loves the list. Memorial Day Cookout Essentials. What's your number 4?
Number 4 for me. If it's a cookout, there needs to be some kind of drinks, whether they're alcoholic or not, just some kind of drinks there that are enjoyable.
That's a good call. Number 4 for me. You can't control it, which is why it's lower on the list. I need good weather. Can't be too hot. Can't be storming. I need good weather.
I like that. It's a good outside the box one. Number 3, something good on TV, sports, preferably good movie or TV show, maybe music or something like that on the TV, but just something on the TV entertaining.
Number 3 for me, I need a good dessert, whether it be cookies, a nice cobble or something. I need a good dessert.
I tried to avoid going all just foods and drinks.
Fair enough.
So number 2, some kind of yard game, whether like cornhole, something like that, or just like a basketball hoop just sitting out there, or football just throwing around, some kind of activity.
I feel it. Number 2 for me, very simple, because I love this as a beverage. Give me some sweet tea. I need some sweet tea. Traditional Southern style sweet tea. Nothing better. I need to feel the sugar entering my veins.
Top choice for me. If it's a cookout, I expect there to be burgers and hot dogs on a grill. That's essential.
Burgers, man. Memorial Day screams a burger type of cookout to me. I know can't pull pork, honorable mention. I need burgers. Give me a good cheeseburger on the grill. That's what I need if I'm doing a Memorial Day cookout. It's got to be. Give me your thoughts on your favorite Memorial Day cookout items on the text line 785-272-9429 or in the YouTube comments as well. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, we're going to look at the Chiefs secondary and how they're built going forward. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you. As we wrap up the final full hour of the show, we'll have about 30 minutes in the 2 o'clock hour before we hand things off to K-State baseball as the Batcats take on the Kansas Jayhawks in a Sunflower Showdown edition at the Big 12 Championship. Winner moves on to Saturday on the semifinals of the Big 12 Championship. Loser goes home. And one of those losers goes home a lot more sad because KU's season is like over if they lose. And K-State's likely gets to continue in the NCAA tournament. But there's no guarantee. So a win for them is also important as well. We are going to look at the Chiefs secondary here in just a minute. But a tweet just popped up to me from the National Baseball Hall of Fame that just hit for major remember some guys territory and also reminds me of how old I am. And I know I say that at 27, so a lot of you out there can, make fun of me for saying I'm old at 27. But when the National Baseball Hall of Fame has their Hall of Fame Classic that's coming up tomorrow, it's a Legends game. So just a bunch of old baseball players who are not playing anymore go out and play a game. It's just for fun, all that stuff. When I have watched a majority of these guys play baseball, I now feel old. I just do. To run down some of the names here, Rajay Davis is playing in this game. James Loney, Brian Dozier, Brendan Ryan, Brian Holiday, Josh Willingham, Terrence Long, Jeremy Guthrie is pitching in this game. And that's just for one team. Another team, we got Chris Young, the center fielder, not the really tall executive pitcher for the Rangers. We got Josh Reddick, Ryan LaVarnway, Travis Snyder, Glendon Roosh, JC Romero, Alex Wilson. I just feel so old. Like, these guys are playing in a Legends game. A game of just remember some guys territory. And I'm just like, wow, I watched like half of you actually play baseball. Not your entire careers, thank the Lord. Though maybe I was around for all of Ryan LaVarnway's career, or at least I remembered a good chunk of it. Great, like I was around for all these careers. None of these guys are like, pitching deeply in the, in the early 90s. But like, it's just guys I grew up watching play baseball, and now they're playing in a Legends game. And I'm sorry, that makes me feel old. It just makes me go, wow. Jeremy Guthrie's pitching in this game. I remember getting a really close snapshot of Jeremy Guthrie at the Rose Victory Parade. I still have that picture saved on my phone of just Jeremy Guthrie walking around with the people. That's still a treasured memory of mine. And now he's pitching in a Legends game at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Good for him, but also, good God, I feel just kind of old right now. Speaking of old, or lack thereof being old, the Chiefs secondary is something we spent some time discussing yesterday, and what it could be going forward in reference to L'Jarius Sneed and him being a contract extension candidate, but one that maybe is not as important as re-signing Chris Jones. And we discussed how the Chiefs' young secondary could be that with the youth of the secondary, maybe you could afford to not have L'Jarius Sneed on the roster and you'd have a bunch of guys being able to come in. And so I wanted to look at the secondary, look at guys on the roster who should contribute in some way. And look at how many of them are going to be here next year as well to kind of set up some continuity. So this year, as far as your cornerbacks go, you should have L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Shamari Connor, and Nick Jones. And Connor and Jones between corner and safety, that's kind of where they'll fluctuate. And then at safety, you're going to have Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Mike Edwards, Deion Bush, and Nazeeh Johnson. And then you got a handful of camp invitees and other guys who are signed, most notably Echo Boydo, which is awesome. Good for Echo Boydo. We haven't talked about that like enough or at all here on Mic'd Up. But Echo Boydo signed with the Chiefs. Like, that's cool. I'm excited. That's awesome. I loved Echo Boydo at K-State. Like, even as a guy who's not a K-State dude, but just covers them for work, loved watching Echo Boydo. He's a fun little camp invitee and a low roster signing guy for the Chiefs. So the question becomes, if you remove Sneed from that group, namely the cornerback room, are you okay with it? Because here how this shakes out. Sneed's final year is this season. He's only guaranteed this year. He is a free agent when this season comes to an end. Then, just looking at this room as a whole in the entire secondary, you could technically cut Justin Reed next season and save $10.7 million to the cap. So that's a cap cutting move you could do. But the rest of these guys I've named here are all young first or second year players who are not free agents for a long time. That group that's not Shamari Connor or Nick Jones, they all aren't free agents until 2026. And Trent McDuffie might not be a free agent until 2027 if you assume that he's going to have his fifth-year option picked up by the Chiefs, which at this point I assume he would be, but we're also only into year 2 of the experiment and seeing what he is. That's until 2026. That's like a lot more time until any of them would be free agents. And then Shamari Connor and Nick Jones wouldn't be free agents until 2027 as well. So out of Snead, McDuffie, Watson, Williams, Connor, Jones, and Reed, and Brian Cook, of those 8 dudes, 6 are on your team till at least 2026. You got them here, next year, and the year after. 3 more years at minimum with all 6 of those guys. And then, you add in, Connor and Jones here till 27. You add in the fact that Trent McDuffie's here probably to at least 2027 because the Chiefs will likely pick up his 5th-year option. That is a lot of time in football terms to have an entire room set with some talent. And then you add like Najee Johnson will be an exclusive rights free agent at the end of the year as a 7th-round pick. So like he'll be back because you just give him a tender and you probably sign him back at that tender and he'll be really cheap. And then you got Mike Edwards and Deion Bush are free agents next season, but they're also depth pieces. So really what you're looking at, and this is my question I pose to myself and to all of you, and I want to get your thoughts on this. If you don't sign L'Jarius Sneed to an extension, this is what your secondary likely looks like next year. Your cornerback room, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Shamari Connor, Nick Jones, with Connor and Jones maybe swapping between safety and corner, but positions are flexible. They're defensive backs. And your safety room is Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Najee Johnson, and then free agent 1, free agent 2, insert here, just some veteran free agents. Are you okay with that setup is the question. And for me, my answer, as I look a little bit deeper into this, is yeah. Because if you look at next year, and the Chiefs can always address things through the draft and through free agency to replace pieces as we go. But as far as like guys starting, I've made my opinion very clear on Trent McDuffie and the fact that I think he's a going to be a bona fide top tier corner in the NFL and can be a CB1 for you. I love Jalen Watson's game. I think he can be a CB2. Joshua Williams can add depth. And I think with the way the Chiefs evaluate talent, Shamari Connor and Nick Jones can add something to this team. So I think your cornerback room is set. And even if, let's say, let's move Shamari Connor to the safety room and he plays just safety. Well, all right, you bring in a 5th corner for depth. Or honestly, as long as he progresses well, can Echo Boydo be your 5th corner? There's also other guys DiCaprio Boodle's in there as well, and because he's still kicking around. They signed the corner, Lamar Jackson, not the quarterback. Lamar Jackson signed the cornerback, Lamar Jackson. He'll be in for camp and amongst with a few other guys. Could any of those guys kicking around for camp be 5th corners? Just be guys that exist? I think they could. So then your safety room maybe is Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Najee Johnson, and Shamari Connor. Maybe Shamari Connor balls out. Maybe Shamari Connor in his limited action goes, man, that kid right there, that's a safety. Cool. You cut Justin Reed to save $10 million. Your starting corners are Shamari Connor and Brian Cook. A 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick. Now you have $10 million more to play with, nearly $11 million to play with. And you just need to add, like I said, you might already have your 5th corner. So then it's, all right, we need to add a safety or 2. That's it. And there need to be big price tags. Deion Bush and Mike Edwards are combined making like $8 million combined. So that's what I find fascinating is truly, if you look at it, Jake and I have been saying you have a young secondary, so you don't need to pay Snead. But actually looking at the names involved, you really can be flexible. Because that room, those guys without L'Jarius Sneed in there, that is a secondary that can still compete. Because all those guys are a year older, too. That's third-year Trent McDuffie. That's third-year Jalen Watson. That's third-year Joshua Williams. That's second-year Nick Jones, and that's kind of still an up-in-the-air thing of what that would even look like. That's at least 3 corners at the top that are another year older, which in theory usually means another year better. Most guys have not perfectly linear, but usually a positive progression is what I'd call it as they go through their careers. Or at least I think that those 3 at least will. Listen, man, I love L'Jarius Sneed. I really do. I love his skill set and his specific abilities when it comes to how Steve Spagnuolo runs this defense and runs the way they do things in Kansas City on that side of the football. But man, I really, really, really think the right move is to not pay L'Jarius. And I don't say that lightly. I think guys should get paid, and I think L'Jarius should get a nice payday. But the more and more I think about it, I think you have really 2 options in front of you. Play the entire year with L'Jarius Sneed and make it a fun ride. Let him test the open market, and if it works out for him to come back, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Do what you've done with every other player on this team. Set your line in the sand, and if you can get to him without crossing it, welcome him back with open arms. But if you got to cross that line in the sand to get to it, well, I don't know. That's where, you kind of have to start thinking about things. Or, and this is the tougher one, you consider trading L'Jarius Sneed. I know that one's a bit tougher. I know sometimes that goes against, my philosophy of known commodity versus draft picks. But it's because the known commodities are what I'm playing off of here. My known commodities are these young Chiefs corners are really good. And yeah, you maybe worry about depth if you were to trade away L'Jarius Sneed, but you don't plan for those things sometimes. And I think maybe that's a way to set yourself up a little bit better going forward. I don't know if that's what they would do. I don't really think that. I think that's the least likely of the options. But I have to consider it, and I'd think about it. Because looking at this Chiefs secondary, man, Jake and I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but truly looking at this and actually breaking it down and staring at these names, they're set up nicely. The Chiefs are set up real nice in their secondary, mainly because they hit it out of the park with their draft last year. They got 3 NFL caliber corners. NFL starting caliber corners. Because the third corner is, in my opinion, a starter in today's day and age. In one draft. Because they showed in the AFC Championship game, those 3 can do the job. Even if I thought that they were the 3 all year, I still think those 3 can do the job and succeed and make things work. I really think they can. So I'm fascinated to see what Steve Spagnuolo does with this defense coming into this year. I'm very excited to see what the Chiefs do overall going forward with L'Jarius Sneed, with the contract situation, because he's a guy that either is going to get paid or is going to get paid elsewhere, if not in Kansas City. But I really think the Chiefs don't have to feel pressure to do it, because I think they'll be just fine if they don't end up having L'Jarius Sneed, which contrasts to they need Chris Jones to be on this football team. We're going to take one more time out. We'll wrap up the 1 o'clock hour with a little bit of discussion of the NBA playoffs coming up next.
Wrapping up the 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. The NBA playoffs have gotten interesting. And somewhere Dan Lucero is cackling wildly. The Denver Nuggets are chilling. Nikola Jokic's feet are up. He is probably doing something silly like playing with a horse. And he's doing nothing else. The Nuggets know they're not playing basketball again until June 1st. They still don't know who they're playing, though, because the Miami Heat, after being up 3-0, have lost Game 5 and Game 6. Well, Game 4 and Game 5. And this series is now 3-2. We're headed back to Miami. The game is tomorrow night. Celtics Heat Game 6. Miami wins. They get a nice 5-day break until Game 1 of the NBA Finals in Denver. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5-day break. 4-day break. Something like that. Either way. Get a nice little break until Game 1 of the NBA Finals. The Celtics, if they can pull off a win and force a Game 7 will be Monday. There was a moment in time where we were all joking that we were going to have like a week of no basketball because it was going to like be a couple of sweeps or at least a sweep and a gentleman's sweep. And we're going to have to wait like a week between the end of the conference finals and the start of the NBA Finals. Well, the Boston Celtics have decided to make that interesting. And it's because they finally started playing like a real team. That's the only way I can word this, is they started playing like a real team. Had a great win coming up in Game 5, won 110-97 in Game 5. Just a great, just dominated ever since the first quarter. Looked fantastic. Looked excellent. Game 4 was close at the half. Like, Miami was up 6 at the half in Game 4. And then Boston just completely owned the second half to take that lead. And they've won back-to-back really big games. I kind of made fun of Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown when they were like, don't let us get hot. Don't let us win one game. Now Jaylen Brown's going, they let us win 2. I don't know if Boston can pull this off. No NBA team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. There was, LeBron's 3-1 comeback and crap like that, but no team's ever come back from 3-0. Boston's trying to do that crazy thing. I don't know if they can do it. At some point, I think Boston will just run out of gas, or Jimmy Butler will just become Jimmy Butler again and just completely, eviscerate everything. But no matter what, if I'm Denver, you're the real winners in all this. Because either of those teams is exuding, both of them are exuding so much energy. Exerting, that's the right word to use there. Not exuding, exerting. Or exerting so much energy to get to this point. And they're going to get way less of a break before playing the better team. Because the Nuggets are the best team left. Denver's better than both these teams. Easily. That just fascinates me. And I find it hilarious. And I find it funny. And I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we come back Tuesday and Boston's done it. And we're talking about a great comeback in Game 7. Who knows? That'll do for this hour, Mike Depp. We got the final 30 minutes coming up next. It is time for the final 30 minutes of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, except it's just Fulton, here on 580 WIBW. We are off once again 30 minutes early due to K-State baseball as the Sunflower Showdown comes down to Texas. And the Jayhawks and the Wildcats lock horns. Or I guess they don't have any, like, lock claws, but no, like, the Jayhawk wears boots. Yeah, I got to use the random phrase of lock horns because the Jayhawk and the Wildcat don't have anything to lock up. We can't lock beaks because the Wildcat, obviously, being a Wildcat, doesn't have a beak. Can't lock claws because, the Jayhawk wears boots. These are the things I think about. We're beginning this hour in a very weird place, but these are the things I think about. I know none of you care, but this is what goes on inside my head. It's a very dangerous place. But we have 30 minutes left in the show today before we hand things off to the K-State Radio Network. We're going to preview the Royals National Series, the series in its entirety, and just kind of our thoughts on that series. We are still waiting for the Royals to make their corresponding roster move. They set down Nate Eaton yesterday. We all know what that means. Like, we all know what's about to happen, But they're not officially called up Drew Waters yet. But if I do not see that Drew Waters has been called up and is in the lineup tonight, oh boy, am I making my way to Kansas City and giving somebody a piece of my mind. But Drew Waters should be back today in Kansas City. We're just still waiting on the actual full-on announcement from the Royals that he has been called up. But we're going to preview Royals and Nationals, and we'll finish things up with the mic drop on today's show. As always, you can join in on the final 30 minutes on our text line, 785-272-9429, on the Fleming Place Line and Spirits phone line as well, 785-272-9429. You also can jump in on the YouTube comment section as well. Just go to youtube.com. Sports Zone 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. You can watch the live stream. You can watch me live right now. And then there's no 580 Sports Talk today. That's a bummer for those of you that really enjoy Brendan and Dan. They're off today. K-State baseball will just completely wipe out their show today. You can listen to the Bat Cats right here on 580 WIBW. And if you get real wild, just watch back to Brendan and Dan's show at 580 Sports Talk yesterday. Or watch back Wednesday's show. Or Tuesdays or Mondays. Because you can rewatch any single edition of either Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton or 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. You can watch either of those shows anytime on the Sports Zone 580 YouTube channel. You can also watch our different contents, our instant reactions to anything that had happened before, some of our high school athletes of the week from last year as well. All that great content can be found right there on our Sports Zone 580 YouTube channel. So many great reasons to subscribe if you have not yet. But to kick off this final 30 minutes of the show here today, the Royals began a 3-game series with the Nationals tonight. First pitch tonight is 7:10, I believe. I'm going to confirm that right now. Tomorrow, I believe, is a 3:10 first pitch. And then Sunday, it is 7:10 tonight. I have been confirmed that I am correct that it's 7:10 tonight. And then Sunday and Monday are both 1 o'clock first pitches. The Royals will play in St. Louis on Monday for Memorial Day. So yeah, 7:10 tonight, 3:10 on Saturday, 1:10 on Sunday. Jordan Lyles gets the start tonight, so prepare for that as you will. Get your goggles ready to shield yourself from the horror, or get your refuse buckets ready if you need them. Jordan Lyles will take on Patrick Corbin, a guy who used to kind of be good, but is no longer good. But knowing how things are going to go is going to carve out the Royals because it's going to drive me insane. Because that's the pain I constantly live with. So it's Patrick Corbin and Jordan Lyles tonight. Patrick Corbin, for what it's worth on the year, is 3-5 with a 4.47 ERA. Has only walked 10 in 56 and a third innings, so does not walk a lot of batters. Also does not strike out many as well. He's only given up 8 home runs compared to the league-leading 14 that Jordan Lyles has given up. It is a dead even on the money line right now. It is minus 110 for both the Royals and the Nationals. It is a straight up, basically, pick 'em. The Royals are favored by minus 1.5 on the run line thus far. So tonight is what it is. The one thing I look forward to tonight is the return of Drew Waters. Again, it has not been made official, but I'd be surprised if it is not made official here shortly. We will not have a lineup before I'm off the air because the game's at 7:10. I expect to get a lineup at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. So just need to keep an eye on any sort of Royals social media or on ESPN's official website to keep an eye on that lineup, or maybe even MLB.com and things like that. We'll get you the lineup tonight for the Royals. I, unfortunately, will not be able to get that to you because there's just no way they're doing that in the next 20 minutes. But Drew Waters tonight is the one thing I look forward to. He should be back. He should be playing center field. He should play center field 5 out of every 7 days. If they want to do 4 out of every 7 to start off to ease him back in from his oblique, I kind of get it. But Drew Waters should be playing essentially every day over Jackie Bradley Jr. If he doesn't, well, then we can start with some complaints. But give it a week or two before we start complaining about Jackie Bradley Jr.'s playing time. Because obliques are tricky, because Drew Waters, they don't want him to re-aggravate anything. They might take it a little careful the first, week or two. That is what it is. We just need to kind of be prepared for it and just understand what's going to happen early on. But Drew Waters should be back starting today. That's a positive to watch this Royals game tonight for. I mean, Bobbitt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, the usual guys. They're why you watch this game tonight. The pitching No. And like I've said, I'm done analyzing Jordan Lyles. The bad pitcher is bad. I'm washing my hands of that. This just lets me check off another box towards his eventual DFA next season. That's it. That's all Jordan Lyles is to me. But the rest of this weekend becomes fascinating as well because, and the Royals have not really fully commented on this, but ESPN can be a good predictor of pitching matchups for the most part, not perfectly. But it looks like the Royals are going to do what I thought they were going to do, and that Jordan Lyles starts tonight. Brady Singer is being moved up to tomorrow. Normally, you would have that weird open number 3 spot in the rotation coming up tomorrow, but with the off day we had yesterday, Brady Singer could start tomorrow and still be on his normal 4 days of rest. So it looks like Brady Singer will start on Saturday against Josiah Gray, which opens up the fun part of the next 2 starts after that. I said when this week began that I believed Daniel Lynch would make his return this week. That by the end of this week, Daniel Lynch would be on this team. Now, I kind of don't get it. It's like a half right if he pitches on Sunday, because that technically does start a new week. In my opinion, I think weeks start on Sundays, not Mondays. Depends on where you stand. If you're a Monday week starter, I'm 100% right. If you're a Sunday week starter, I'm kind of wrong. The point is, I think Daniel Lynch will make the start on Sunday against the Washington Nationals at home. But then you have another open start against the Cardinals. And that's where I think you get real crazy and give Mike Myers another start. Mike Myers looked great in his start against Detroit. Like, he looked fantastic on Tuesday. Why not give him an opportunity to go again? You could use an opener. You could see Carlos Hernandez be an opener and work as a bulk set and do a Hernandez-Myers combination. I'm kind of 100% on board with that. But that's the exciting part to watch this weekend, because the Washington Nationals, they come into this game 21-29 on the year. They're bad, but they're not apparently Royals bad, which is really painful because this Nationals roster isn't good. The Nationals do not have a good offense. They have hit the second fewest homers in the major leagues. They don't hit for a lot of power. They don't hit for a high batting average up and down the lineup and things like that. I know I literally just got through the Tigers series saying this exact same thing, but that's just what the numbers are. And I'll say the same thing for the Tigers series. In theory, this is a chance for the Royals pitching to get back on track. But also, I was wrong about that last time, so maybe all of a sudden the Nationals offense goes crazy again. I don't know. I really don't. But the Nationals are in the middle of their very slow rebuild, and they're trying to get more of their things going. They, of course, had the Juan Soto trade last year and a couple of big things they've been doing. But pitching is where the Nationals have actually surprised more than anything. Is when the offense has been kind of bad at times. The Washington Nationals pitching staff has been much better than expected. Mainly Josiah Gray, who we will see coming up on Saturday. He leads the team with a 2.65 ERA and has their most wins. Mackenzie Gore, who is their youngster they got in the one of the youngsters they got in the Juan Soto trade, he leads the team in strikeouts with 63. Like, they got some good young arms to accelerate their rebuild and put themselves in a positive situation. So it should be an interesting series. This is a series to where, again, and I feel psychotic for saying this, the Royals can, and I think should, win the series. I've said this at length, and I know a lot of you are hearing it are probably thinking I'm absolutely insane at this point. This team is better than their record. This is not a 15-win team. And I know that is just ludicrous to say. But I firmly believe chips are down. This is better than a 15-win ball club. They just, a lot of times, have not played like one. I think the talent collection is better. Even the Washington Nationals maybe are playing at just a better groove than you are. The Nationals come into this series winners of 3 of their last 5. They took the series from Detroit, winning 2 of 3, and they dropped 2 of 3 to the San Diego Padres. That's why I believe you can beat the Washington Nationals. I just think you can't. I don't know if they will, But that just feels like the situation they should be. And this series to me is another one of those where can you get back on track a little bit? Jordan Lyles is Jordan Lyles. I'm ignoring him. Tonight, I'm only focused on can the hitters hit well? Can you rough up Patrick Corbin? That to me is what tonight's all about. Is can you rough up Patrick Corbin? If you can do that, good job, success. If they lose this game 10-8 because Jordan Lyles gave up 8 runs in 4 innings, I don't care. I'll be bummed because they lost. And as we all know, I can't not let a loss affect me. But if the offense roughs up Patrick Corbin, it's just, the pitching didn't keep it in. And mainly it was because Jordan Lyles gave up a billion runs and the bullpen did what they could, but they just couldn't hang on. Well, then they lost because the bad pitcher stinks. Like, that is what it is. But tonight is, can the offense hit Patrick Corbin? And then Saturday and Sunday are, do the young starters play well? Can Brady Singer figure something out? Can he really finally get something? The velocity dip concerns me about Brady Singer. The command issues are becoming a problem. But overall, I still think there is something really tangible there that he can be and that he can work with. And then, like I said, Sunday, I really feel strongly Daniel Lynch is going to make that start. If I had to make a guess right now, it's Daniel Lynch on Sunday afternoon against Mackenzie Gore. And Daniel Lynch looked great in his final start for Omaha. 6 innings, 61 pitches, no runs allowed. His command was impeccable. His knuckle curve looked great. Fastball looked good. Changeup looked good. Can he do that against a big league roster? And I think the Nationals are a good first test. That, I think, is what you should look at in all 3 of these games. If you have a chance to watch all 3 games, or if you have a chance to attend some of the games, please, even when the baseball team is bad, like the baseball is bad to watch, going to the ballpark is still fun. Like nothing beats a day at the ballpark. Nothing does. It's the best way to spend a day. But tonight, can you score runs? And the next 2 days, can you pitch? Because let's say the Royals get swept this weekend. And man, I don't want to think about that, but let's just say they do. And you lose 10-8 tonight. You lose 3-2 on Saturday, and you lose 2-1 on Sunday. The positive is your offense looked great on Friday, but man, they couldn't get going against 2 young starters who are pitching really well, and Josiah Graham and Mackenzie Gore. That's a bummer for the offense, but you can kind of get it. They did good against the bad starter. They had some issues with 2 young guys who are pitching really well. But then you can go, man, the only bad starting we have is Jordan Lyles, where, maybe Brady Singer goes 6 innings, 2 runs. That's a success. Maybe Daniel Lynch in his debut goes 6 innings, 1 run. The sweep leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and you are bummed, and everyone has a right to be angry if that were to happen. But the positive side is your pitching looked better. And when the offense struggles, I can only take that to a level of seriously because I feel confident that this is a good offense that just occasionally has some downswings because every good offense has its troubles. So that's what I'm looking for this weekend. I think this is a winnable series for the Royals against the Washington Nationals. You can, as always, hear all games right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. We will go from K-State baseball into Royals baseball tonight here on 580 WIBW. We'll have those games coming up on Saturday and Sunday as well. Saturday's pregame beginning at 2:30, Sunday's pregame beginning at 12:30 right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. So if you're out, let's say you're if you're out at the lake traveling, have fun, whatever lake you go to. That's me in a couple weeks when I go on vacation. Put the Royals on the radio, and maybe they start playing bad and you turn them off. But at most, it's fun to listen to Denny crone on about the Royals and occasionally take backhanded shots at them because Denny doesn't have a filter sometimes. Or listen to Jake Eisenberg or Ryan Lefevre if he hops over in the other booth for a little bit. They got some great guys on the Royals radio network. That's that's what I would do if I was hanging outside this weekend because then I could do other stuff to distract me if things start going really bad. That's the other part. I just get distracted when things start going truly horrendously bad if I need to for the Royals if they're, truly screwing some things up and being a gigantic problem. But Royals Nationals this weekend, then they take on the St. Louis Cardinals for 2 games coming up on Memorial Day on Monday, and then on the road on Tuesday for an evening game as well as that Greinke on the bump. And then the Royals have a weird back-to-back off day of May 31st and June 1st. So there'll be back-to-back days with no Royals baseball. That's going to feel really strange. But that's coming up this week as well before they welcome the Colorado Rockies to town. And we get to see the Royals take on Dan's team, the Rockies, and see which of us, Dan or myself, gets to feel better about our baseball teams coming up at the end of next weekend. But should be fun. You can hear it all right here on Sports Voice Kansas 580 WIBW. We're going to take one final timeout. We got the mic drop coming up next. Time for the mic drop here on 580 WIBW and mic'd up. And for me, it's very simple. First things first, everyone have a safe Memorial Day weekend. Whether you're sitting at home and hanging out with friends and family at home, stay safe. If you're going out to the lake or anywhere else for a gathering or some kind of a excursion, just stay safe. Be safe out there. I want to hear from all of you coming up on Tuesday. Either because you can yell at me and make fun of the Royals and watch my pain be on my face, or we can celebrate the Royals doing something good. We can do either of those two things. It could be really fun. Also, I mean, maybe some other good sports news breaks coming up when we're back on Tuesday. Speaking of that, we're off on Monday. Just a reminder. Jake and I aren't here on Monday. 580 Sports Talk, Brendan and Dan, they're not here on Monday. We're all taking the day off for Memorial Day. We're going to take some much-needed rest and recuperation. We will all four be back for our respective programs coming up on Tuesday. My mic drop today is pretty simple. There's not often that I have positive feelings towards players on rival teams or on teams that I like my team to be better than. But Liam Hendricks, the closer for the White Sox, finished up what should be his last bullpen session against his own team today is the last one. He should hopefully be activated off the injured list coming up this weekend. 6 months after he was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Listen, you can think whatever you want about the Chicago White Sox. Trust me, I don't think very positively of them. But Liam Hendriks is a great player, an incredibly fun player, a former Royal, and an all-around great guy. And the fact that in 6 months, he went from being diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and should be back on a mound pitching competitively it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's a sports story that makes me so happy, because when good people have bad things happen to them, it's an absolute bummer. And I'm sure there's probably better words I can use than bummer, but that's the one I'm going to use. And for Liam to stay positive through the entire experience, to use that fiery nature he shows on the mound and attack his illness that way, and to beat the snot out of it and come out ahead this quickly, this fast, to return to his old dominating self. It's awesome and it's great. And listen, as long as he's not playing the Royals, go strike everybody out, buddy, and look great and be your normal, energetic. Please keep the live mic away from him on the mound. As we learned during the All-Star game, we got the bleep button ready for him. But that crazy Aussie gets to be back on the mound sooner rather than later, 6 months after receiving his cancer diagnosis. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy to see him succeed and see him beat it, and wish nothing but the best for Liam Hendriks, except when he plays the Royals. And then I'd like him to either be bad or just never get to see the field. I would take that as well. But overall, congrats to Liam Hendriks. Congrats for beating cancer and coming back onto the field. It's great. I can't wait to see it. I'll probably watch that first appearance he makes. It's going to be great. Once again, we're off on Monday. So no Mic'd Up, no 5A Sports Talk coming up on Monday. We're off for Memorial Day. Jake's going to be down with some family, chilling out, relaxing, sitting with Brendan and Dan. I'm going to be just sitting back, relaxing a little bit and taking the load off and trying to have a fun, relaxing weekend. All of you do the same, and all of you be safe this Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back coming up on Tuesday with more Mic'd Up, more 5A Sports like usual times from 12 to 3 and from 3 to 6. But for now, I'm going to hand it off to the K-State Radio Network. Batcats and Jayhawks. Winner goes to the semifinals. Loser goes home. We're getting off right now to the K-State Radio Network. Thank you for listening to Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW.